All right, this is Ego Defense Mechanisms Part 2, an article by Richard von Gremmler.
Narrated by Matt and Madeline Anderson, and we link the article in the description box below.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
Through the experiencing and resolution of stressors, this will reinforce or strengthen the conscious emotional environment, whereby somewhat controlling the necessity for eco-defenses. But these dynamics will be undetectable within an individual's consciousness, and this progression will provide a degree of self-confidence for the conscious acceptance and exploration of future stressors.
All right, so what do you have for that as a synopsis?
So, as you experience and resolve these stressors that are coming at you, it will slowly strengthen the conscious emotional environment, and it will almost practically get rid of the need for your ego defenses because you've been resolving and experiencing all these stressors.
Right, so I thought of an example. I recently broke up with my girlfriend, and I realized after the breakup that there were a lot of things that I was actually really unhappy with about our relationship, but because of my need to not be lonely, my need for the relationship, I wasn't aware of that in the relationship itself. I would sometimes get glimpses of it that I remember, but my ego defenses were blocking me from consciously being aware of some of these problems. And once the relationship was over, the need is gone because you can't fulfill it through the relationship anymore. So I had access to that that information. But by me being able to see those ego defenses in retrospect, means that I at least have enough security to face them. Ideally, you want to see them as they're happening, but as Richard talks in other places, you will become aware of things after a delay, and you will work on decreasing that delay until you get to the point where you can see things as they're happening and sometimes even anticipate stressors before they happen.
It's like you had that stress, you knew you had that stress, but you couldn't see that stress until you finally broke up with her, because then you could see all the stress that it was putting on you, because it finally opened up those doors, released that ego defense mechanism, and you were able to actually see that all the stress she was putting on you with all these different problems.
But I don't want to blame her for putting stress on me, rather, because that puts me in a powerless position. If I blame others, I'm just the victim of how they treat me. So I like to think of it as I was incapable of facing the situation and responding to it in a positive way. For example, I would like to have been able to respond with being assertive about my thoughts and feelings in some of those situations. So by seeing the reality of the situation in retrospect, in a sense, resolves the experience. I understand the dynamics of the experience now, and that strengthens my ability in future relationships with facing the reality, being capable of seeing these dynamics when they're happening rather than waiting until the relationship's over.
Now let's carry on to the next.
Okay, so what's
paragraph.
next? Actually, we're going to read the next two paragraphs because they kind of go together.
What sometimes occurs when experiencing these diverse and unpredictable stress scenarios is we may actually resolve stressors without even consciously realizing the activity of the emotional dynamics of the respective experience. To acknowledge this activity entails consciously comprehending a specific stressor and then experiencing the emotional feelings transpiring while identifying and resolving the stressor. Not only is it vital with becoming consciously aware of the present and future stressors we're exposed to, but also stressors we may have previously inadvertently, unconsciously resolved. To me, it's extremely important with having a comprehensive understanding of the circumstances responsible for our stress, whereby utilizing the dynamics of the respective stress experiences as a resource when encountering new stressors. And also, this self-examination of our emotional feelings will improve our circumspection abilities.
All right, what's your synopsis? these two?
It's very important for everyone to become aware of all of our stressors, even the ones, as he said earlier in these paragraphs, that we have unconsciously resolved in the past. Um, it will help us to understand our ego defenses more and our stressors more.
Yeah, and this will be a resource for us when we face new stressors. And I think the example I gave earlier with my girlfriend is sort of an example of that. It's like, even though I didn't become aware of the dynamics until afterwards, by being aware of what happened is a resource for me in future relationships. Okay, and next we're gonna read the next two paragraphs together.
The failure in ego defenses of introspection is why individuals will unconsciously experience latent, inconsistent, and conflicting emotional processes while consciously stumbling around in an emotionally confused state. The subjective or emotional objective is to strive with designing a conditioning process by which to become resolute with exploring and understanding as many of our stress situations as possible. Therefore, the desired objective is for the reduction of stressors and the strengthening of our emotional threshold, whereby becoming more confident with discriminating and resolving present and future stressors.
Okay.
So this means that the emotional or subjective goal is to explore and understand as many of our stressors as possible, because then that will give us a resource to look back to when we're facing new stressors, more stressors, or when we are stumbling around in an emotionally confused state. We'll have these resources to fall back on.
Yeah, speaking of that, I definitely identify with this stumbling around and an emotionally confused state with the example of my girlfriend. We would Skype, and I can't tell you how many times during the Skype I would get frustrated. It happened almost every single time, and she would say, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'd be blocked. I said, "I don't know." Well, and I was very confused. Like, why am I blocked? I have no idea. I'm just frustrated. Oh, something's driving me crazy. Well, it was her that was driving me crazy for various reasons, and but I wasn't capable of being conscious of those reasons because of my need, which was creating the ego defenses.
Was acting as it.
Because I knew that if kind of unconsciously I knew that to bring these problems to the surface would threaten the relationship.
I know that there's so many times that I just get upset for no random reason. I'm so confused. Like, why am I upset? Why am I so bothered by like my brother or my dad or my mom like doing something? But then I feel like later I realized that it was just all these ego defenses that were blocking me from actually seeing what I was really stressed about, and that's why my anger was trying to tell me there's something wrong here.
Right. Yeah. So when you're feeling confused like that, that's a sure sign that barriers and ego defense mechanisms are at work, which knowing that doesn't always help you to solve the problem, but that's your motivation. If you don't want to get stuck like that and trapped by your ego defense mechanisms, is why we need to work on understanding and resolving as many as we can, because as Richard says here, the more we do that, the stronger our threshold will become, the more confident we will be, and the fewer problems we will encounter because of our ego defenses. And that's enough, I think, for this video. Stay tuned for a Ego Defense Mechanisms Part 3 in the next week or two, and thanks for listening and watching.